Ever feel like the tech world just throws around job titles like confetti?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Today we're tackling one that we've been seeing more and more of, but it's still kind of mysterious. Integration engineer.
Definitely.
You sent over some super interesting stuff for this deep dive, a career guide, and then some info on this tool, RoleCatcher.
Yep.
So should we just dive in?
Let's do it.
All right, so first things first. What exactly an integration engineer?
Well, it's a really interesting field because it's not just about the technology.
Okay.
It's kind of this intersection of, like you said, the tech and the human interaction side of
So
things.
it's not just sitting in a dark room coding by yourself all day.
Not at all.
Okay, good to know.
The guide really emphasizes that it's not enough to just be like a tech whiz.
Right.
The successful integration engineer, they need to bridge the gap between those complex systems, A&D, the teams that are actually using them.
I see. So it's like they're speaking both languages.
Exactly. They're kind of like problem solvers, communicators, almost like negotiators in a way.
That's a twist. I was picturing someone like, neck deep in code, not necessarily like leading a meeting or anything.
Right.
So what does this actually look like day to day?
Yeah, so the guide lists a bunch of tasks, but think about it this way.
Okay.
Imagine a company, and they're using like a separate software for sales, for marketing, for inventory.
Silos.
Yes, each one is its own little island. The integration engineer is the one who builds the bridges to connect all those islands, making sure that data can flow smoothly between them.
So they're creating a unified system, making sure all the parts can actually talk to each other.
Exactly, and that's where it becomes more than just a tech job.
Yeah, because you're right. I can already see how that involves understanding not just the technical language of the systems,
All right.
but also the practical needs of all the different teams that are actually using these things.
You've got it. The guide even mentions like stakeholder management, communication skills. Those are key requirements.
Interesting.
It's not enough to just code. You have to create solutions that actually work for everyone involved.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of solutions, the guide really emphasizes that the demand for integration engineers is through the roof.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, very positive job outlook. Why now? Why are these skills suddenly so sought after?
It really ties back to how businesses are evolving. We're in this age of super specialized software. Companies rely on a whole bunch of different applications just to function.
Right.
But that creates a new challenge, which is data silos.
Each piece of software is like its own little silo, holding valuable information hostage.
In a way, yeah. And that's where the integration engineer comes in.
Okay.
They break down those silos. They create this unified view of the data, which lets businesses do so much more. They can make way better decisions,
Right.
automate processes, and ultimately serve their customers better.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's not just about making the systems work together. It's about like unlocking the potential of that connection for the whole organization.
Exactly.
It's almost like they're like architects in a way. They're designing the flow of information within a company.
That's a great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And just like an architect has to think about both form and function, an integration engineer balances that technical expertise with a really deep understanding of what the business actually needs.
That's where things get really interesting, I bet.
Absolutely.
But let's be honest, the tech world can feel pretty intimidating, especially for someone just starting out.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What kind of skills are we even talking about here?
Right.
Because I was looking through the guide and they were throwing out all these terms: integration protocols, enterprise architecture. It's a lot.
It's a mouthful. Right.
Yeah, it is.
We should try to break it down, make it make sense for someone who's just kind of dipping their toes into this world.
Yeah, because right now I kind of feel like I'm at the edge of the pool and I'm not quite ready to dive in yet.
Okay, I like that. So let's break it down.
All right, so let's dive into those technical skills. Where do we even start?
Well, the guide kind of lays it out, like on this spectrum. You've got your must-haves, and then you've got the things that are nice-to-haves.
Right.
It can seem overwhelming, but think of it like building a house, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a strong foundation before you start adding in all those fancy features.
So what are those foundational bricks, you'd say, for someone who wants to be an integration engineer?
Programming languages, those are essential. Like the guide specifically calls out Java, C++A, and Python.
Yeah.
A lot of systems are built on these, so you got to speak their language.
So if you want to get those systems talking to each other, you got to speak the language first. Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about like integration protocols? I kept seeing that term pop up.
Oh yeah, so those are like the the rules of the road for how these different systems communicate.
Right.
Just like we have traffic lights and road signs to keep things moving smoothly,
Right.
these protocols make sure that data is flowing in an orderly way, reliably.
So it's not even enough to just speak the language. You got to understand the grammar, the syntax, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Are there like different dialects or protocols that an integration engineer would need to be familiar with?
Totally. You've got your SOAP, REST, messaging queues like RabbitMQ or Kafka.
Yeah.
Each one has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Wow.
So an experienced integration engineer is going to know which tool is right for which situation.
So this is getting really in the
A
weeds.
little bit, yeah.
What about enterprise architecture? That one kept popping up, and I was like, what does that even mean?
So that's like the high-level blueprint of all the IT stuff in a company. Remember our island analogy?
Yeah.
It's like looking at the map again, but this time you see all the bridges, the tunnels, everything connecting those islands together.
So you have to understand not just the individual systems, but how they all fit together within the larger technology of the organization.
Exactly. You got to see how your work impacts the entire flow of information
Wow.
and make sure your solutions are going to work with the company's long-term IT strategy.
That is a lot to consider. No wonder this job is in such high demand.
Right.
Speaking of which, I love how the guide broke it down by career stages, like junior level all the way up to principal engineer.
Yeah, it's a cool way to see how your responsibilities can grow as you gain experience. Early on, you might be doing a lot of assisting senior engineers, maybe focusing on specific integrations.
Right, like entry-level stuff.
Yeah, maybe doing some troubleshooting.
Yeah, and they gave those examples. It's like, writing scripts to automate tasks or testing integrations, documenting processes.
Exactly. But then as you move up, you get to take on more responsibility, leading projects, mentoring other folks.
Right, you're managing people.
Exactly. Maybe even working directly with clients to understand what they need.
And then at the very top, principal engineer, it almost sounds like they're these tech gurus.
Oh, yeah.
Guiding the entire company's strategy around integration.
Yeah, it's a very strategic role. It's
Yeah.
less about hands-on problem solving and more about anticipating future challenges.
Right, big picture stuff.
Exactly. Evaluating new technologies, making sure the company is staying ahead of the curve.
It's amazing to see how much room for growth there is in this field.
Pretty cool.
You can start with a really solid foundation in programming and then work your way up to being a strategic leader.
Absolutely.
But with all these skills, all these different career paths, are there any shortcuts? I noticed the guide talked about certifications. Are those worth looking into?
They can be. It's like putting a stamp of approval on your skills so that, potential employers know you're serious.
Yeah, because everyone loves a good gold star.
Right, exactly.
But they listed a bunch. Are there any that are better than others or have more weight?
It really depends on what you're going for, to be honest.
Right.
Some are very specific, like if you're looking to work with a particular integration platform.
Right.
Others are more broad, like you could become a certified integration architect.
Oh, wow.
Or even project management certifications could be useful in this role.
So it sounds like do your research, figure out what it is you want to do and what certifications are going to get you there.
Exactly. And don't underestimate just getting experience.
Right.
The best way to learn is by doing.
That makes sense. But let's be real, the job searching process is a little terrifying these days.
Oh, it can be.
Especially with everyone talking about AI, automation.
It's like you're competing with algorithms as much as you are with other humans.
Speaking of, that's where this whole RoleCatcher thing comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because you sent over some stuff about this, and it seems like it might be able to help with this whole new world of AI-driven recruitment.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to be a way to, cut through all the noise and help you connect with the right opportunities.
So it's more than just your average job board.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. I mean, it does aggregate job postings. The AI-powered features, those seem to be where it's at.
Yep.
They're really trying to level the playing field in a world where it feels like algorithms are making all the decisions.
Okay, now you've got me really intrigued. What kind of AI are we talking about here?
All right, so let's dive into some of the features.
So RoleCatcher, it's more than just a job board.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. I mean, it does pull together postings from different places, but the really interesting stuff seems to be the AI features.
Okay, yeah.
They're really pushing that as a way to stand out when it seems like algorithms are kind of running the show now.
So color me intrigued. What kind of AI magic are we talking about here?
Well, they've got a few key things. First, There's the AI tailoring for your CV and cover letters.
Wait, so instead of me spending hours like agonizing over every word,
Yep.
I can just let the robots do it for me.
Basically, the idea is RoleCatcher looks at the job description, figures out the important keywords, all that.
Right.
And it helps you, like, present your experience in a way that's going to catch the eye of both recruiters and
Yeah.
those applicant tracking systems.
Okay, that's actually really appealing, especially the cover letter part. I'm
Mhm.
not a fan of writing cover letters.
I don't think anybody is.
But how do we know it actually works?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
The stuff they send over mentions success stories, which is great. But it would be interesting to see, like, some actual numbers on how often these AI-polished applications actually lead to interviews,
Yeah, that would be really interesting data to see.
for sure.
What else does RoleCatcher do?
Okay, so another feature that stood out to me was this get discovered thing.
Get discovered, okay.
So picture this, right? You're scrolling through job postings,
Right.
and then, boom, an employer reaches out to you
What?
because your skills match what they're looking for.
Hold on. Instead of me sending out a million applications and just hoping for the best,
Yep.
employers could actually find ME based on, like, my profile?
Exactly. That's the idea. They're saying they've got this network of employers that use the platform to actively search for people.
Okay, that does sound like a game changer.
Right.
Because then you're not just waiting for someone to notice you, you know?
Exactly.
But again, it all comes down to how good their algorithm actually
You
is.
hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's great if they have the employers there, but if the AI isn't smart enough to make the right connections, it's kind of pointless.
Totally, totally. What about the interview prep stuff? They were talking about that too, right?
Oh, yeah. So we all know interviews are kind of terrifying.
The worst.
Right. This tool offers AI-powered practice interviews,
Okay.
and they have, like, thousands of potential questions it can throw at you,
Oh, wow.
which is pretty cool, and it analyzes your video responses.
Oh, interesting.
So it's giving you feedback on your body language, your tone, all of that.
So it's like having a digital interview coach.
Exactly.
That's way more high tech than what I do. I usually just practice to my bathroom mirror.
Me too, honestly. But the idea of getting that real-time feedback, like
Right.
being able to identify those nervous ASICs and really hone your delivery, is pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, it is. It really does seem like job searching is entering this whole new world.
It really is.
One thing I kept thinking about, though, was the comparison they made to ChatGPT.
Ah, yes. That's an important point
Mm-hmm.
because ChatGPT is amazing. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like a Swiss Army knife of AI. It can do it all. Write you a poem, summarize a research paper.
Right.
You can ask it your deepest philosophical questions.
Yeah.
But is it the best tool for something as specific as writing your CV or acing a technical interview?
It's like using a Swiss Army knife to, like, carve a turkey. I mean, you could probably do it,
You could.
but there's probably a better tool.
Exactly. And that seems to be RoleCatcher's argument, right? They're
Right.
laser focused on the job search, especially in tech.
Right, very niche.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So their AI models, they're trained on this highly relevant data, which could make them more accurate, more effective in the long run.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. But I do want to say, no matter how fancy these tools get, I think there's always going to be that human element to this whole thing.
100%.
Like building connections, networking, letting your personality show.
Absolutely.
That still matters, right?
It's huge. And the guide even says this. Those technical skills, they're super important, obviously, but they're only one piece of the puzzle. Being a good communicator, a team player, being able to solve problems.
Right.
Those are the things that actually make you stand out as an integration engineer.
So it's like hard skills, A&D, soft skills.
Always. It's what makes you memorable. It's how you build relationships. And ultimately, it's how you build a career that you actually love.
That you find fulfilling, too.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive into the world of integration engineers. For anyone listening, here's something to think about. How can you take your tech skills, A&A, your own unique strengths to not just get the job, but really thrive in this field?
It's a journey.
Mm.
Always be learning both the technical stuff and those human skills. They're always evolving.
So well said. And on that note, thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
This was fun.
It was really interesting. We'll catch you next time when we dive into something new. Until then, stay curious.